Hey, another sweaty victory in Mets land. How you doing, Mets fans, wherever you're a fan of? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it with our latest Metropolitan post-game segment, your number one stop shop for all things Mets news, rumors, post-game shows, live shows, everything in between. We got you covered for the largest platform here, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY. Thank you all so much to each and every one of you first chiming in, smashing that like and subscribe on, whether you're watching live or on replay, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, it doesn't matter. Hit those buttons. Thank you all so much, folks, and spam those W's. It was far from a perfect victory for the Mets, who were up 6-0 in this ball game and need Edwin Diaz to come in to secure the final out and ultimately the victory for the Mets as they go on to win by a final score of 7-5. This was a Mets game that just a couple outs ago was 7-2, looking like, okay, you know what, they're gonna rebound and have these exact amount of runs that they gave up in their last game against the Pirates, a flip-flop of the score. I don't hate that. I'm in favor of it, okay, but of course, Adam Ottavino, Reed Garrett, what do these guys do? They are not helping the Mets right now in this bullpen. Reed Garrett has pitched over 70 pitches over the past 3 or 4 days or so, which is ridiculous. Adam Ottavino just isn't competent as a righty reliever for the Mets right now, and it's fitting that we're going to talk about the lack of competence for the Mets on the bullpen front, because we're also going to get into a big segment today, a video we did earlier today, but we're going to expand further in depth here on the Mets acquiring a veteran right-hand reliever in Phil Maton from the Tampa Bay Rays. What does Maton bring to the table for the Mets bullpen right now? How has he fared in 2024 versus his walk year with the Astros in 2023? Why does David Stearns like him as much as he does and have the faith in him that he currently does? And ultimately, why did the Mets decide to DFA Joey Lucchesi as the corresponding move? That is what we, of course, are going to get into, everybody. We will break down the ball game inning by inning, as we always do, getting into all the key highlights. As you guys and gals can see here in 1 second, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up the highlights now for each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. But everybody first chiming in live, continue to let me know your initial reactions to this Metropolitan victory, as again, they take down the Washington Nationals in the first game of a 3-game set by a final score of 7-5. You know, it's pretty fitting that for the Mets today, there were 2 clear key standouts on the offensive end, and they're 2 guys that should be in this year's All-Star game, yet currently aren't even All-Star reserves, because that's how much of a joke the MLB All-Star game status and voting is. Yes, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, these guys continue to carry the weight for this Mets offense, and then some, that we have seen thus far this season. When Nimmo has been doing has been absolutely phenomenal. This man somehow, someway poked an Oppo bomb out of the ballpark when that thing looked like it was carrying for days, and it continued to carry all the way to the Mets getting the early lead. Then Francisco Lindor looking dominant in the leadoff spot, now batting with an over 900 OPS and an over 300 average and an over 160 WRC plus since becoming a leadoff batter this season. I don't want to see it from any of you schmucks out there that say, oh, Francisco Lindor isn't deserving. Oh, he hasn't been playing good baseball. But yeah, eat my socks, dude. Eat my shorts, however you want to say it. Francisco Lindor has been tearing the cover off the ball, and the Metsies have been getting production from them, along with guys like Harrison Bader, who had a great day of clutch 2-out hitting. So excited to get into Bader's performance as well, along with everyone else in between. And of course, on the pitching end, the key thing to make note of today is Jose Quintana giving the Mets 7 innings of 1 hit, 0 earned run, 1 walk, 5K ball. We went from saying Jose Quintana couldn't get the Mets more than a bag of baseballs at the trade deadline. Now we're talking about, should we keep Jose Quintana leading up to the MLB trade deadline, as he now has an ERA sub 1 over his past 5 starts for the Amazons, including back-to-back 7 shutdown innings against, yes, the Washington Nationals. We will get into a little bit more there on the offensive end, as always, and shouting out our amazing sponsors, that being at Sora MLB and BetUS. Make sure to check out both those amazing sponsors today, folks. Links down below in the description. We will get to them shortly here, folks. But to my over 400 concurrent viewers, thank you so much for being in here. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like, that subscribe button, and of course, let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments down below. We're going to get to your comments as we always do here shortly, folks. And to my Twitter viewers, if you're watching live or on replay, hit that like, that follow button, that retweet button. But please know that for all my Twitter viewers, I'm only going to be interacting as I always do with my live viewers here on YouTube. So if you haven't hopped over to the YouTube platform yet, Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you guys do so. Thank you so much for that. Final update, personal update that I got for you guys. I will be live tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, in the Bleacher Report app, breaking down dark horse MVP picks for Major League Baseball this season. We're going to get into that. Make sure you guys are chiming into the Bleacher Report app. Go to MLB News, Rumors. You will find me there for that live show around 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow before we ultimately get into our latest post-game segment. As you guys can see in the highlights, I actually realized I have them a little too large, so let me fix that real quick for you all. That way everything kind of comes in clear how you guys want to see the highlights here. But yeah, awesome stuff from the Mets on the offensive end. The bullpen continues to be a problem, but the Mets started to address the bullpen today, and we are going to get into that shortly. Unhinged Patrick with a $2 holla says, Juan Soto is signing with the Mets. Yep, it's a foregone conclusion, my man. Pat, I'm glad you finally realized after your Yanks continue to free fall. Pat with another $2 holla says, hi, I'm a big fan. Please say hi to my son, Gerald. Hi, Gerald. Happy to have you in here. Pat is my co-host of the Bridging the Gap podcast, and we will be back with our latest episode within the next week, as both Pat and I are going to preview the MLB trade deadline for both the Yankees and the Mets this season. Very excited to get into that for overall New York sports coverage. Spam those W's in the live chat, everybody. Thank you all so much for the donations, and now let's let it rip with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. Shout out, as always, to my guys Greg and Jordan with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. When will we blame the manager? Priest, we've been blaming the manager a lot lately. Let's pump the brakes. Today, we got to put some blame overall still just on the lack of competence on the bullpen front, one, but also just the unfortunate overusage of said bullpen that we've seen since Edwin Diaz was first suspended. We're going to get into everything on that front a little bit more here, folks. Also, guys, let me know in the live show to everybody watching live on a replay, how are we on the visuals and the audio front? I realize because I have a lot of things running right now, it's probably going to slow down the Mets highlights that I show. Honestly, I think it makes it a little bit better for the show, so that way you guys can really kind of pay attention and look at that dog eating that glizzy with his owner that you see at City Field today. Absolutely love those. I could not have them in the highlights for that reason. I actually like it kind of slowed down. As long as I'm not laggy, I like how this looks because it makes it a little bit easier for you guys to watch as it's going on. But how's it going, everybody? Carl's great member. Everybody first chiming in, guys. We have so much to get into in today's show. Again, today is not your typical post-game segment. Today's segment will also be us discussing Kodai Senga. How did he fare in his latest rehab outing, and when can the Mets expect him back? Also, on the bullpen front, what is there to know about Phil Maton? Again, we're going to be breaking it all down with my good friend Isaac Groffman. Isaac, who of course shares nightly pitching reports with me, as we're going to break down for Jose Quintana and the remainder of this Mets bullpen. But Isaac also has a lot of key notes to share in regards to the newly acquired reliever by the Mets and Phil Maton. What works for him, what hasn't been working this year, what is different about his arsenal versus last year where he had great success with the Astros versus an up and down year thus far throughout the first half of the season with the Tampa Bay Rays. He's been great over his past 11, 12 outings, but still, what is there to know about Maton? We will get into all that, everybody. But I first want to start off today's show by breaking down the game inning by inning, as we always do. So as you guys and gals, Steve, great member, Vincent, great member, Joseph, great member, Guardians of Chaos, great moderator, happy to have you all in here. As always, everybody, spam those W's if you haven't already. Now let's get into breaking down this ball game, because again, this was a tale of two ball games once again for the Mets here. On one side, you had early offense, and it was awesome, headlined by, yes, that being in Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo. But then on the pitching end, you got Jose Quintana doing great things, but it was the second half of this ball game. It was once Jose Quintana was pulled, the Mets had far from comfortability from their bullpen, and that's something that will continue to be a problem. And Brandon Nimmo spoke pretty bluntly about the Mets' continued struggles, and he said that it's a problem that needs to be addressed. We know this with, not having enough confidence late in games because we've been blowing it as often as we have. Things need to change there for sure, but he's like, we have to, of course, continue to stay the course. And I appreciate, again, the whole not sitting on your hands mentality that a Billy Epper may have right now with this bullpen, where David Stearns doesn't. David Stearns has acquired 2 relievers that will impact the Mets bullpen as soon as this week. Fully expect Matt Gage to get an opportunity to the southpaw sooner than later. In the case of Phil Maton, he's actively on the roster now. We'll be with the Mets in the next day or two. So first and foremost, everybody, we're going to break down the game inning by inning, innings 1 through 9. We're going to get into all the key numbers to share there. Then after we break that all down, we will get into all the key notes beyond the video that we posted earlier today. So please check it out if you haven't already on everything there is to know about Phil Maton in this move. But we've had some time for this to already marinate quite a bit since I did that video, and I have some further information that, especially for my pitching nerds, I will love to hear this on Phil Maton. So we will talk about Maton after breaking down the ball game, Quintana, and the offense. We'll get into Phil Maton, why this trade is nice and such a low-risk, high-reward move from the Mets, and then we will wrap up the show with our latest farm report. All I ask from all my live viewers is to make sure you guys remind me to do the farm report, especially as we get, 45 plus minutes into a show, I could get sidetracked and not realize that I still have one more segment that I gotta do before wrapping up said show. But all right, guys, I digress. Let's get into this ball game. Let's break it down. What transpired inning by inning? We're already over halfway to 100 likes. Thank you all so much to my live viewers as you guys continue to smash those buttons. But let's break down this ball game from the top. Again, we have as follows, folks. We have Mr. Jose Quintana on the bump against Mr. Irvin, who killed the Mets last time we matched up. Irvin went a solid 8 scoreless innings against the Mets and just allowed one measly hit, I think, to Jeff McNeil. Irvin's curveball was a thing of beauty in his last game against the Mets. Had a whip percentage of roughly 50% or so. Today, right around 10%. The Mets came out guns a-blazing, swinging early and often against Irvin, and they made this Nats starter pay for, of course, making the Mets pay. And what was a brutal 1-0 loss in that 11 a.m. 4th of July game, thanks to Jesse Winker, Adrian Hauser, and Carlos Mendoza, allowing him to pitch to him. I digress. Let's break down the ball game inning by inning here, folks, as it starts in the first. A quick 1-2-3 that we see there for Jose Quintana against the Nationals. For the Mets here, Francisco Lindor does what he does best, and that's get on base there from the leadoff position. Leadoff with Lindor with a leadoff single. We kick off this ball game. A throwing error made by Irvin on a pickoff attempt, and then we see Lindor get from first all the way to third because of said error. Surely the Mets are going to score here with a runner at third and no outs. Buckle up. Unfortunately, not the way you think it's going to happen. JD Martinez gets on with a walk. Runners on the corners, no outs for Pete Alonso. Pardon me, there was 1 out. My mistake. For Pete Alonso, who grounds out softly to the pitcher Irvin. Very frustrating. Alonso did not have good at-bats whatsoever today, and Alvarez strikes out to end the inning. So the Mets had 2 runners in scoring position to kick off the first inning with 2 outs, but were not able to prevail whatsoever. And on the offensive end, we're going to talk about, while the Mets still put up 7 runs today, why guys like DJ Stewart have absolutely no business getting starting reps in said lineup the way that he continues to find himself having right now. Why are we going to let a guy who hit 1 bomb against the Texas Rangers in the month of June dictate this continued playing time? It is not justified enough with Starling Marte being out with injury. We saw what Tyrone Taylor did today later on in the ball game, coming in, of course, in the outfield after not being a starter. I know Taylor has been big swing and miss for sure, but he's a better outfielder and gives you a better chance to put the ball in play than what DJ gives you. DJ, of course, is a strong eye at the plate, but walking when you are as slow as DJ is only helps you all that much, i.e. Daniel Vogelbach, for example. So, to reel back into this one, folks, the Mets are tied 0-0 through 1. As we get the bomb the second, DJ Stewart flies out. Mark Vientos pops out. Bad at bat by Mark there. McNeil then walks with 2 outs. Harrison Bader with a 2-out single. Bader continues to clutch this like never before, baby. And Francisco Lindor drives in the first run of the day with an RBI single that we love to see to left field. 1-0 Mets, and then Brandon Nimmo says, you know what? I want my 15th home run this season, and I want it now. Brandon Nimmo ripping a bomb to left. This one carried high and far. My girlfriend looked at me and said, like she sighed initially when Brandon made contact with the baseball, because we thought it was just going to be a fairly deep fly out to left, nothing too crazy, but it kept carrying and kept carrying, and we kept seeing the outfielders there for the Nationals go farther back, and we're like, is this really happening? It is happening. Brandon Nimmo with an opposite field 3-run home run, and the Metsies just like that are up a whopping 4-0 already throughout the first 2 innings. JD Martinez pops up there shortly after to end the inning. At the bottom, everybody, as we then head to the top of the third, Luis Garcia gets on with a single, but thankfully, back-to-back strikeouts later, huge strikeouts on Trey Lipscomb? If I'm going to butcher that name, I apologize. Jacob Young, he strikes out there. He does hit CJ Abrams with the pitch, and then he walks Lane Thomas, but he gets out of the jam thanks to, of course, James Wood with a liner right back to Francisco Lindor, who gets Quintana out of the inning. Mind you, Jose Quintana went 7 innings of 1 hit ball today when he had over 50 pitches through the first 3 innings. Quintana cruised after this. It's not even funny. Great work by Jose, and great work to, again, do your best Houdini impression by working out of that bases loaded jam. As we then head to already, we're going to advance to the bottom of the 4th as nothing else happens for the next inning or so. Mark Vientos grounds out, McNeil grounds out, then with 2 outs, Harrison Bader with his second hit of the day, both of which coming from 2-out hitting, because of course it does. Bader with his second hit, Lindor flies out there to end it. A 1-2-3 fifth that we see there for Jose Quintana. And the bottom of the 5th, the Mets, what do they do here? They don't do anything, but of course they were trying to get something going. JD Martinez rips his first hit of the day. He, of course, has been slumping as of late. Alvarez rips a single as well, but the Mets have nothing to show for it as DJ Stewart pops out in the infield to third base to end the inning. So glad DJ Stewart's batting 6th today and starting in right field. Love it, Mendy. Can't you tell how much I love it right now? Top of the 6th, an easy 1-2-3 inning of work there for Jose Quintana. And then as we get to the bottom of the 6th, the Mets pile it on again with the offense. And it's all with 2 outs. And it all starts once again, 2-out hitting with none other than, yes, you guessed it, Harrison Bader. Bader rips his third 2-out hit of the day, and Francisco Lindor, for his second time today, drives him in. This time, he would do it in a brilliant fashion that we see by Lindor. Pardon me, Lindor did not drive in Bader the first time. My mistake. I believe that was McNeil, because he got on with a walk, and then Bader was driven in by Nimmo's 3-run home run. Lindor now drives in Bader with his 16th home run of the season, a towering shot. It makes it a 6-0 ball game. Brennan Nimmo flies out to end said inning. We see there in the 7th inning, we have Tyrone Taylor come in to bat 6th and play right field over DJ Stewart, and a beautiful 1-2-3 inning of work for Jose Quintana, who, again, final line is as follows, everybody. In case you didn't listen up already, folks, listen up now. It is 7 innings of 1 hit, 0 earned run, 1 walk, 5 strikeout ball for Mr. Jose Quintana. On a scale of 1 to 10, before I get into my personal rating and my man Isaac's here on Jose Quintana, I want to know from you amazing Mets fans, how would you rate Jose Quintana after today's win and after today's start on a scale of 1 to 10? Let me hear it, as always, everybody. Now, as we hop back in this one, continuing to break down this victorious matchup for the Mets, it would not come easy, however, because of course it doesn't come easy. Adam Ottavino comes in to pitch the 8th inning, and of course all hell starts to break loose. Luis Garcia with his second hit of the day, his first extra base hit, this being a double, his 16th of the season, puts a runner in scoring position. Then we see Vargas comes in a pinch hit for Trey Lipscomb, and Vargas, who was horrendous in the last series the Mets played in that 4-game set for the most part, he rips his first home run of the season, of course, off of Adam Ottavino and makes it a 4-run ball game. Adam hits CJ Abrams with a pitch. CJ is hit for the second time today, and Daniel Nunez comes in to try to clean up the mess. And you know what Daniel Nunez does? He does exactly that. He does give up after striking out Lane Thomas with the second out. He does give up a hard single to James Wood, who, of course, the towering, young, exciting lefty bat there for the Nationals, had a 5 RBI day over this past week. Absolutely insane stuff. But thankfully, after that single by James Wood, there would be a ground out by Jesse Winker, and that does it for the inning. As we then head, of course, to the bottom of the 8th, Tyrone Taylor rips his first hit of the day, and it is his second triple of the season. Mark Vientos ground out later. Jeff McNeil rips his 12th McDouble of the season. We love that. I'm definitely eating that for breakfast, baby. Thank you, Jeff. Even though Jeff is not a guy I expect to be with the Mets beyond the trade deadline or necessarily should be getting starting reps, if you're going to play, I want you to produce because I'm a Mets fan at the end of the day, right? And Jeff McNeil certainly did that. Makes it a 7-2 ball game for the Amazons here, and nothing else transpires after a Lindor walk. Now Reed Garrett comes in for Daniel Nunez in the 9th, and it's far from easy. He gives up a soft double to Juan Yepez, like soft, but based on the defensive alignment, could not get there in time. Keeper Ruiz, of course, won the acquisitions along with Josiah Gray. famously part of that Trey Turner, Max Scherzer trade with the Dodgers a couple years ago. Keibert Ruiz continues to do great things against the Mets, unfortunately. He rips his 6th home run of the season to make it a 3-run ball game. And then to add insult to injury, a passed ball after Jacob Young gets on via a walk. This allows the runner ultimately to get to second, get to third, to home after Edwin Diaz comes in. So mind you, Reed Garrett, of course, couldn't even finish this inning. The Mets have to turn to Edwin Diaz for the final out of the day. Not something ideal you want to do with your star closer. As awesome as it is to see Edwin healthy and looking good, you don't want to have to ramp him up just to utilize him for one effing out. And that's what the Mets unfortunately had to do today. Edwin Diaz gets that huge out, and that does it for the ball game. He strikes at C.J. Abrams. The Mets go on to again win by a final score of 7-5. And we are going to get into whatever questions you guys got, especially on the front of why the Mets DFA'd, that being in Joey Lucchesi. We will discuss that and more in our overall thoughts and pitcher report on Phil Maton here shortly. But we're going to continue to break down the ball game before we get to that part, folks. However, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I'm all propped up and set up live for my viewers here live on YouTube. And for my viewers that are watching here on Twitter, thank you all so much for being in here. Continue to smash that like, that follow button, that retweet button. Greatly appreciate. Thank you, each and every one of you. So let me double check this, and then we're going to continue to roll on with today's show. Also want to, again, thank you all so much who have taken the time today. My great members, first chiming in live on a replay. Oliver Gutierrez, how are you? Daniel Caps, how are you? Mets bullpen, yes, it has been atrocious. A whopping 11.37 ERA in the last 10 games. Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and just say that kind of stuff is not going to get it done. And thankfully for the Mets, of course, since Edwin Diaz has returned to the pen, they've had more success, but they've still been around 500, and they still have had ridiculous bullpen woes and just head-scratching decisions by Carlos Mendoza, among others, to say the least, that we have talked about at great length over this past weekend against the Pirates, and even to a degree there against the Nationals for sure. And I see SNY is talking about Phil Maton quite a bit here too. Again, we're going to get into everything you guys need to know on him here shortly, everybody. But before I get into all the details on the pitching end from Jose Quintana, this bullpen, the offense and everything in between, folks, and why this Mets bullpen is greatly taxed and needs continued reinforcements right now at this current rate, as the Mets have 5 more games left before they hit that long-awaited, highly anticipated for many players All-Star break. Speaking of All-Star break, almost like Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Lindor, two of the most valuable players in their respective positions, actually ranked second in most valuable in said positions among all players in the National League, yet neither are an All-Star representative, neither are even a guaranteed reserve for the likes of a Tatis in right field, that being in Nimmo, or any part of the outfield, or that being in the case of Mookie Betts for someone like Francisco Lindor. Just absolutely sickening that these guys aren't being considered when you look at the numbers and when you look at the slates that they've been having. But before we get into more on the numbers, everybody, I do have to tell you about our amazing sponsor here on the channel and how you guys and gals can get involved today with the best MLB fantasy game out there. And that is, yes, you heard it, you've known it, you've been following it if you've been a follower here on WardyNYM, and that is our amazing friends at SoRare MLB. Just give me 1 second, everybody, and then we will continue to roll on with this one. Let me make sure this is... Let's see what we got in the chat here. Maton has a 0.75 ERA in his last 11 games. Yep, we're going to talk about that for sure. We got everything on Maton. I got you guys covered. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
It's heating up this July on SoRare MLB, where the thrill of the chase meets the prospect of big rewards. Lock in and go yard, collecting cards and playing your way to the top. Get things right and you'll be calling your shot at a share of over $225K in total cash prizes and more. Join for free. Build your winning roster, watch your players perform, and improve your strategy each week for a shot at being crowned a champion. Sign up and enter now. July is for baseball.
You heard it here, folks. Again, when it comes to SoRare MLB, the best MLB fantasy game out there, July is for baseball. If you guys haven't gotten involved with your SoRare MLB, free tournaments to play, or of course ones that you can win cash prizes, ticket giveaway prizes, a boatload of others by getting involved by signing up and clicking the link down below today. Again, SoRare MLB has you covered for all these fantasy sports needs. And right now, I'm currently in 4 different tournaments at the moment, and one of them I'm absolutely dominating in. I'm currently ranked 177th out of 8,391 people. Safe to say I'm going to get a huge turnout of an upgraded card or a cash prize. And if you guys have been getting involved with the July chase right now, the grand prize winner for these latest tournaments with SoRare MLB is, yes, a whopping $15,000. And we've given away Mets tickets just for signing up to SoRare MLB and, of course, drafting and entering your team today. That's all you guys got to do. We will be doing giveaways like that again, folks. But just take a look at my tournament that is absolutely cruising right now. Pablo Lopez has yet to even pitch for me, and we're going to see how he does. Gunnar Henderson hasn't even done anything for me yet, which is nuts. Brandon Nimmo's been awesome. Edwin Diaz, of course, pitched today. Just now got the save with the 1 out. If they even label that as save, I could be wrong. Josh Naylor's been balling out. Jeremy Pena's done nothing yet for the Astros. And Zach Wheeler got hurt, but before he got hurt, he gave me a solid 30 points. So we'll see how we do there with our great friends at SoRare MLB. But get involved with the game today so you can play against me and all your fellow amazing Mets fans here in the SoRare MLB community. But let's now pivot into the pitching end, everybody. Because Jose Quintana was absolutely fantastic today. And this is something that cannot be understated. We've now reached a point with Jose Quintana. Let's see. Oh my God, second WAR. Do you even know what WAR is and how they get it? Absolutely, Priest. And I know that wins above replacement is a very important thing. And to have a second best WAR from Francisco Lindor when he was as horrendous as he was for the first month plus of the season shows you how impressive that is, because he's been playing that good at baseball since a piss poor first month of the year. Let me just add this quick before we get into the pitching end, because I've been wanting to relay these numbers, and there's been some awesome ones I have noted, but this one specifically definitely stands out just a little bit. And this comes from my man James Shiano. James does a great job for his Mets coverage as well. A great friend of mine. And just some numbers to throw at you. Francisco Lindor, since batting leadoff this season, 46 games, a 306 average, a 366 on base percentage, a 539 slug for over 900 OPS, 9 home runs, 27 RBIs, 36 runs scored, 10 stolen bags, and a 161 WRC plus, including today's game. That's nuts. And that's been fantastic. And that sample size has also been brilliant. That sample size, I'm pretty sure, is more than what Trey Turner's played entirely this season, or close to. They're right around neck and neck in that regard. I know Turner obviously won the fan vote, and he's starting there out of the NL at shortstop. But let's talk now about the pitching, everybody, because I got a lot to say about Jose Quintana in particular. And a guy who's going to help me talk about Mr. Jose Quintana is none other than my great friend that many of you guys know, Isaac Rothman. Make sure to check out my friend Isaac on Twitter if you guys haven't already, that being at ISAACGROFFMAN for all your Mets pitching threads needs. He's going to be dropping an awesome thread if he hasn't already after the conclusion of today's game, so make sure to check it out. We're going to get into the numbers here on Jose Quintana, and then after that we will do a speed run on the offensive end, why the Mets overall need more bullpen help, and then we will cap things off by talking about that Phil Maton trade and of course the latest on the farm report. But Jose Quintana, 7 innings of 1 hit, 0 earned run ball, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, 103 pitches, a 3.91 ERA now on the season for Jose. What worked so good for him today? Well, the sinker was 30% of the arsenal that we saw there, sitting around 92 and topping out 94. Curveball at 29% of the arsenal was sitting right around 97. Four-seam, 19% of the arsenal, sitting right around 91, top down 92. Change-up, 18% of the arsenal, 86 miles per hour. The slurve, 3% of the arsenal at 78 miles per hour. Ever since Francisco Alvarez has come back, Quintana looks 10 times more confident, comfortable, and he's making all of his pitches at his command. So, honestly, Jose Quintana, what did he need the most this entire time while he has been gone? That being in Francisco Alvarez. And why gone? I mean Jose Quintana not performing well. That's what we've been needing. He has not been a guy that has been at all reliable this season, but Quintana now over his past 5 starts has a sub-1 ERA, 0.89 to be exact, with a 0.89 whip and a point batting average of 162 and a K per 9 of 8. So very respectable numbers there for Jose Quintana, who now has a sub-4 ERA on the season. So what's worked for Jose Quintana? Well, his velocity has increased as the weather has has gotten warmer, which is great, and gives you more room for errors since he does not need to have as much pinpoint location like he's needed plenty this season to have success as a soft tossing lefty. Instead, he can now focus on throwing his fastball high up more in the zone, and throughout this great stretch, Quintana is throwing his curveball more and his slurve, which has a lot more horizontal movement, less. This goes hand in hand with his change of throwing his fastball high more, so something to make note of. His curveball has less horizontal movement, but more vertical movement, making it break straight down and therefore tunnel better with that high fastball. So again, a nice pitch to pair with the high heater as well to really deceive these batters. His curveball is actually a very similar pitch in terms to movement to Danilo Nunez's slider, funny enough, something to make note of as well. His changeup is also a pretty underrated pitch. Listen to this, everybody. Jose Quintana's changeup grades out well with Stuff Plus, which Stuff Plus is the equivalent to WRC Plus, where if you're at 100, you're league average. If you're above 100, you're above league average. If you're below 100, you're below league average. So if you have a Stuff Plus of a fastball at say 150, that means that your fastball is 50% better than opposing pitchers in Major League Baseball that of course are valid, that you can track down this Stuff Plus statistic. But he's around 105, so just above league average, since it has been above average on the velocity and movement for a changeup. It has had now a 43% whiff rate that we saw tonight, which was huge. We were ready to give up on Jose Quintana, and I will famously say that myself as well, as to my man Isaac a few weeks ago, but look at us now. Wardy, do you think we will be able to trade Quintana? Isaac, that's a great question. He gives him an 8 out of 10 on the start. I give Jose Quintana a solid 8.5 out of 10 in tonight's start. He was masterful. And here's the crazy thing. As good as Jose Quintana was today, I assure you, the Mets are 100% going to have him up for grabs by the trade deadline. Is it a guarantee that he'll be traded? No, of course not. But if you're looking at expendable pitchers that even with how productive that they have been, the Mets can almost take advantage of this, knowing that this continued success may not happen beyond the trade deadline. If you're David Stearns, you have to think very rational here. And while Jose Quintana has been brilliant these past 5 starts, is Jose Quintana really a guy we can depend on in this rotation down the stretch this year, pushing for playoffs? That's a question that I ask each and every one of you, because for me, my answer is still no. I'm not there. As much as I like Quintana, he's a soft-tossing lefty that needs pinpoint accuracy, and this velocity, I don't know how much it's going to continue. So if Jose Quintana stays, I just hope he dominates the way that he is, but for the sake of really, selling high on value right now for a rental piece of a guy that you're essentially can easily replace in this rotation with the return of Kodai Senga, it's an interesting thought to evaluate for us Mets fans, in my humble opinion. And it's one that I greatly have for each and every one of you. Jose Quintana, do you think the Mets should keep or trade from now up until July 29th, this year's MLB trade deadline? Let me know in the chat, as always, folks. And on the bullpen front, Adam Ottavino continued his frustration with, of course, giving up too much over the heart of the plate. Danilo Nunez was strong once again. Lively fastball, wipeout slider when it's right. Reed Garrett looked great with a splitty to end his outing today, getting a key strikeout for sure. But Garrett hanging stuff over the plate as well, looking flat with his pitches. I will give Reed Garrett the benefit of the doubt today, however, because Reed Garrett has pitched over 70 pitches over the past 4 days or so. So Reed Garrett's been worked like an absolute madman in this bullpen. Not something that we would have liked to turn to, but this is what happens when you've had a depleted and hurt bullpen, the way the Mets have been hurt this entire time to the degree that they have been. So that's what I have to say there in regards to the bullpen front. Edwin Diaz did Edwin Diaz things. He just got the final out. We appreciate that, Edwin, striking out CJ Abrams like the dog that he is. But when I look at Jose Quintana, again, I think this creates a great problem for David Stearns and the Mets here. Because on one hand, he's pitching great right now. Love it. I would like it to continue. On another hand, he's a rental pitcher. The Mets have Kodai Senga expected to come back, and we are actually going to get to Kodai Senga today shortly after I break down a bit on the offensive end. So we'll talk a little bit more on the offensive numbers, what's working for the Mets right now, some guys that maybe I don't want in the lineup, all that kind of stuff. Then we will pivot from Kodai Senga. We'll get into the Phil Maton trade, farm report, and then that will wrap up our show. I want to have it nice and structured for you guys today, and we'll help with my timestamps too, that I'm going to try to help for my replay viewers after the fact. What kind of return could he get from Quintana? The Mets went from getting nothing more than a bag of baseballs for Jose Quintana to now putting themselves in a position where they could easily find themselves getting a top 10 prospect for sure. Pitching is so desirable by this year's trade deadline. It's not even funny. And it wouldn't shock me if the Mets could get a desperate team with a deep-ass farm, cough, cough, Baltimore Orioles, and try to get a top 6, top 7 prospect out of. And anyone thinks that that's completely outlandish, it really isn't. We are not far removed from Ben Brown, who's an electric young right-hander now, who's been pitching solid for the Cubs up and down this year. We've seen the success he's had. Well, he was acquired 2 years ago for David Robertson as just a rental bullpen move for the Phillies. Instead of the Mets getting him, the Phillies did first in 2022 from the Cubs that we know. And that was a big return then, and I think we're going to see a lot of returns similar now. Aaron Savali, they even got a prospect for when he was recently traded over this past week. So pitching will be very desirable by the deadline, even expendable pitching like this. So yes, I do think you could find yourself getting a reasonable return, one to warrant considering trading Quintana, knowing that a prospect could be valid enough to have an impact on the team within the next couple of years that could be better than what you're getting right now. Wins above replacement doesn't sound like bullshit to you? No, because when you actually understand the value and the structure of that stat, one of the most valuable stats out there currently, it's far from BS. Yes. Ralph, thank you for the $3 holla. I greatly appreciate that, Ralph. Hope you're doing great, my friend. Happy to have you in here. Dave, great member as always. Hope you're doing awesome. To lead the bullpen now, keep SRF, Nunez, and Diaz. And we're going to see a lot of changes to this bullpen from now over this next month. There's no denying that whatsoever, everybody. So now let's talk. We talked a lot about Quintana and, of course, these relievers. Now let's pivot into the hitting end. And how did the Mets look there? I love you too, Pat. Thank you so much. No, I'm a big fan of you, brother. Thank you for that donation a lot. Let's get some love and hype in the chat for my man, Unhinged Pat. As you guys know, you will see Pat here back on the channel shortly for our latest edition of Bridging the Gap podcast, as Pat and I will preview the trade deadline for both teams in New York, the Mets and the Yankees. Yankees might as well just sell off big because they're going nowhere this year. I'm sure Pat will hate to hear that. I'm sorry, Pat. And on the Mets end, we're going to continue to talk about buying and selling. Let's see here. To stay updated, thank you, Wardy. No, thank you, Kristen Scott Lover. Happy to have you in here. And on the offensive end, this is what you got from the Metsies. Again, as we just recently discussed, folks, the Mets had a total on the hit front of 11 to the Nationals 6, and expected batting average, however, not as favorable as the Nationals. The Nationals 295 today to the Mets 251, but luck was in the Mets' favor for sure. Everyone wish Warden a happy birthday. Pat is just spamming the $2 hollers, and I appreciate that, Pat. Thank you. It is not my birthday, nor am I Warden, but I love you, and I appreciate you with the donations, as always, Pat. I'll have to send them back to you later over Venmo or something, or I'll buy you a drink if we meet up at Citi Field this year. Either works, because the drink will add up. You'll probably need to donate at least $20 or more just to get a water there at Citi Field, right? But Francisco Lindor today on the offensive end, what else is there to say? 3 for 4, great bat-to-ball skills, going for opposite field, ripping for home runs as well. Lindor with a huge day today, 3 RBIs, including the bomb, his 16th of the year, a 253 average and a 776 OPS. WardyNYM, 1 for 5, but that one hit made it count with a 3-run ding-dong opposite field, somehow carried all the way out of there. 252 average, 826 OPS for WardyNYM. JD Martinez, 1 for 3 with a 264 average and an 817 OPS. JD's continuing to try to get out of the rut that he's currently finding himself in, but even JDM in a rut is still more productive than honestly what I feel like we get from a guy like Pete Alonso, unfortunately. Alonso with another 0 for days, now down to 237 on the average this year and a 772 OPS. For the case of Pete Alonso, everybody, where do you guys currently stand in wanting to keep Pete Alonso after the 2024 season? Are you in favor? Are you against? Let me hear it and why. Thank you all so much. Greatly appreciate that. Buy me one of those gross rum buckets for sure, Pat. We'll make it happen. Thank you for that donation. That makes sense why you dropped a $5 because they're expensive and you know it. If you know, you know. Appreciate that donation a lot, as always. Thank you so much for that. Wardy, will the Mets sell Bader? I'd be surprised if they sold Bader. I think Bader is a vibes guy. He's been so clutch for this team. I think the Mets are far more likely to let Bader walk this offseason. I spelled gross wrong. Like, Pat, thank you for the donation again. Stop it, Pat. I appreciate it, though. You're cracking me up tonight. You're like, I got nothing better to do. Let's just spam donos to Wardy here, because why not? But on the offensive end, Pete Alonso continues to labor. So you guys let me know in the chat and the comments down below. Do you want Pete Alonso to be a Metropolitan beyond 2024? Let me hear it, yes or no. DJ Stewart, and here's where my gears were grinded yet again today. I know Tyrone Taylor has not been playing good in his latest sample size of games. He did hit a home run that we saw over this past week, right? But Tyrone Taylor is still doing more than what DJ Stewart can provide anything for you right now. DJ is at best a on-base machine, which is a problem for a slow less than ideal, defensively incapable outfielder, and DJ Stewart, the teddy bear that we love, and I certainly love to call him. Haktua, thank you for the donation again, Pat. You're killing me. You really are. But in the case here of DJ Stewart, he's not helping himself whatsoever. The same way Adam Ottavino is not doing himself any favors to try to stay on this roster beyond July 29th. It's hard to fathom right now. But DJ 0 for 3 with a 168 average of 627 OPS. His slugging is right over 300. What are we doing here? Like, we have, on top of it all, we have a minor league option. DJ seems like a great guy. I'm sure he is. But seriously, why are we rostering DJ Stewart still? It just doesn't make sense. And today was the latest example of exactly that. Tyrone Taylor with his triple, 226 average, 660 OPS. But the context of Tyrone Taylor is important. If you just look at those numbers, you're going to say, oh, Tyrone Taylor's shit. But no, Taylor's a big swing and miss, but he can play all outfields. He's a true fourth outfielder, unlike DJ Stewart, obviously. Mark Vientos 0 for 4 today. Vientos continues to fluctuate with his production as of late, but he's been solid. The defense, though, it continues to need to be worked on, as we know. 287 average, 874 OPS. Jose Iglesias did not get an at-bat today, but he did come in as a defensive replacement to end the game. 313 average, 800 OPS. Jeff McNeil with a Jeff McDouble for his lone RBI and hit today. 216 average, 585 OPS. McNeil, I do believe, is still a bottom 5 player in baseball and active OPS among hitters. Harrison Bader 3 for 4 with 2 runs scored, 279 average, and yes, a 734 OPS. Harrison Bader continues to not only tear the cover off the ball, but continue to be one of easily the most clutch hitters the Mets have had this season. Harrison Bader, what has surprised me the most about him this season is not the defense, because that's what you signed him for. Bader's ability to stay true as a high-contact hitter in the lower part of the order or in the 2-hole when called upon, if St. Nimmo's going to have an off day or if he's not healthy, he has stepped up and great ways. So Harrison Bader, major tip of the cap to you. He has been an on-base machine for the Mets. His 2-out hitting has been brilliant. He's such a level-headed hitter too, which I absolutely love. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that he takes his hitting approach from Johnny Bench and just how he tries to keep himself balanced as a hitter. Very interesting stuff on Bader, which I'm sure there's more information out there than what I can currently relay to you. But awesome stuff from Bader, and I do hope that he continues his clutch heroics the way that Mr. Clutch Door, that being in Francisco, certainly did today as well. So as we continue to break down this ballgame, everybody, let's hop back into the main slide here for a second, as the Amazons again went on to win this one by a final score of 7-5. So now let's get into the key updates that are not related to this active game, and they are related to the guy that pitched today in a game, this time at the AAA level, Kodai Senga. Let's talk about the Ghost Fork man himself. Senga went 2.2 solid innings today. I will bear in mind Senga was not overly dominant per se, that maybe you were expecting him to be, where he wouldn't give up a single hit or anything like that. Kodai Senga today won 2.2 innings, allowed 0 earned runs. He did, however, give up in 5. He's thrown 5.1. I can't talk right now. 5.1 or 5.2 scoreless innings so far in the minors for his rehab. Today, however, he wasn't as dominant, but he was able to really work around after walking 2 batters, and he did need 52 pitches to record 8 outs. So just something to bear in mind with Senga as he continues to ramp up. He didn't have as much luck as maybe, I shouldn't even say luck, but just as pure swing and miss dominance that we saw in his first rehab outing, which was with the Brooklyn Cyclones. A little bit of a jump here to Syracuse Mets, and still productive to say the least. The fastball was topping out 98. The Ghost Fork got some swing and miss on it as well. So the heater looks good. Everything about the arsenal looks good. It's just for Senga to continue to let the rust come off, get comfortable, obviously being in in-game situations with runners on base as well, how to escape those jams comfortably and all those kind of things. So Kodai Senga will have at least another 2 rehab starts, barring any changes. So do expect him back after the All-Star break. So for the Mets here, big goal is to hopefully have Senga again get at least one more rehab start, hopefully before the end of the All-Star break. Before the All-Star break begins, that would be very ideal. If not, it is what it is. But regardless, expect Kodai Senga back. Hopefully, fingers crossed, at some point in the month of July, if not certainly right in the beginning of August, barring any setbacks or any changes on that front. So Kodai Senga, that is the latest on him today. His final line, though, was as follows, folks, because I want to read it off to each and every one of you. And if you haven't already, to my live viewers on YouTube, continue to smash a like and subscribe on, and thank you all so much in advance for the endless support. So, what we see here from Kodai Senga is as follows, everybody. He went 2.2 innings of 2 hit, 2 walk, 3 strikeout ball. Did not allow an earned run. I would like to preface again on 52 pitches. So Senga continuing to ramp up and get closer and closer to making his long-awaited, highly anticipated Metropolitan season debut as the ace that we know, love, and covet. What do you think of the idea of trading for Scherzer back? Hell to the no, Zach. Hell to the no. The last thing I ever want the Mets to do is trade any assets for a washed-up, has-been veteran and Scherzer who been there, done that already at Citi Field, 1. And 2, I don't want to give up any assets for a guy who's just a ticking time bomb of an arm, of a back that's just waiting to happen. Scherzer's injuries have continued to persist and have been so bad that it wouldn't be shocking if Scherzer's career does come to an end in the next year or so. Seriously, that's already been discussed, that he's talked about with his uncertain future on just his health overall and things like that. Max, of course, has his stretches of being dominant, but not a guy that I want the Mets to be giving up any assets for, especially with an inflated market by the trade deadline. There might be a team willing enough to give up some key assets beyond what the Mets have any interest or inkling in doing. And I assure you they have zero interest in acquiring a grizzled vet, a very, very injury-prone starter that they just traded away a year ago. Not a chance in hell I see that happens, truthfully. And we will talk about trade options for the Mets starting this week, everybody. We did it in the recent trade news for the Mets that we're going to talk about in a second. But before I do, everybody, I do want to check up here in the chat and see what you guys got for me. Will they go to a 6-man rotation when Senga comes back? Yes, they will. Great question from, Great question from Elgood, because David Stearns did have a pregame presser today speaking on the acquisition of Phil Maton and all those other things. And he did make note that, yes, the Mets will have a 6-man rotation upon the return of Kodai Senga. These are the following quotes from David Stearns that I will like to relay with you all. Give me 1 second so I can find them all for you guys. Got to go way up here. David Stearns believes the Mets' default stance will be a 6-man rotation once Kodai Senga returns. So bear that in mind. The Mets are going to keep things very open and interesting for the rotation throughout the year once Senga returns. And Stearns also, when talking about the input he's gone from Mets players when it comes to the trade deadline, I like hearing it from our players. I think it's important for me to get their perspective. And what are Mets players doing right now? They're saying, hey, we should be buyers. Brandon Nimmo obviously had a quote yesterday or so saying that the Mets should be buyers by the deadline. The Mets fully intend to both buy and sell right now, barring any drastic changes from now to July 29th. But that's the latest updates on that front, everybody. So let's get into the trade talk. Let's talk about the big news that we saw today, which is, of course, that being a Phil Maton being acquired. And actually, I think now's the perfect time. I'm going to switch these post-game highlights. I'm going to run some Phil Maton highlights for you guys all now, because Phil Maton is the topic of discussion before we do the farm report and then wrap up said show today. So let's put the highlights in here. Let's get that rolling. Okay, there we go. Some Phil Maton Astros highlights from last season, because this season has been too many highlights with the Rays, even though he's looked brilliant his past 11 outings or so. So what is there to know about Phil Maton? Obviously, the Mets acquired Phil Maton for cash considerations or a player to be named later. So usually when you do a trade here with a team like the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're willing to give up assets the way that they did here in Maton for nothing, it comes off as a red flag. But in the case of the Tampa Bay Rays currently, not the case. The Rays are basically buckling up and trying to figure out, just like what Mike Rizzo and the Nationals did, as it's been reported today widely on among Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, and others, and this will go in hand a little bit with the Mets' approach that we will talk about later this week. The Washington Nationals will be full-blown sellers by the deadline. They've already committed to that. That's done. Their push for playoffs was fun. They know they're very close to being a very exciting playoff caliber team, but they're not there yet, so they will be selling assets by the deadline, including a lot of relievers. And in the case of the Tampa Bay Rays today, the Rays, a bottom feeder right now in the American League East, which is arguably the hardest division of Major League Baseball right now. The Rays were depleted heading into the season after, of course, losing a guy like Wander Franco, who has officially been charged today in the Dominican Republic for having relations with a minor. So absolutely burn and piss, you godforsaken piece of shit. You call yourself a human being, not being a Wander Franco. I will absolutely say nothing positive on what a motherfucker he is. And I apologize there for the profanity as well, kiddos. It took roughly 50 minutes to get me to say stuff like that. I apologize, but it grinds my gears to say the least. And on top of that, I'm a newly crowned father of about 3 weeks or so. So it's a more sensitive topic than ever for anything in relation to such terrible things. But to reel back into this, the Tampa Bay Rays, they're going to be full on selling. They may buy and sell by the trade deadline, but more than anything, they are going to be selling mostly, right? And because of that reason, the Mets are definitely going to be putting themselves in a position where they're going to try to pounce with teams that are selling fully. And for the Rays here, they bring Phil Maton after having an up-down season. Maton picked up by the Rays this offseason. I thought he was going to become the next best thing. Maton is coming off of a very good year with the Astros with a 3 ERA and, around 60 plus innings or so. He was working beautifully there that we saw with the Astros this past season. But for Maton, he hasn't had the same swing and miss this year. The K rate has went from being around 10 K per nine in the past 3, 4, 5 seasons to sitting right around 7.5, 7.6. The walks are up by at least a full walk or so. They're sitting around 4.5 this year. So that is what went in hand with the Mets receiving Phil Maton for literally cash considerations or a player to be named later. And I'm sure if it's a player to be named later, that is going to be someone in the realm of a prospect that you don't think is going to be anybody and then become somebody. Similar to how I'm waiting for Kashawn Askew, the very crafty and wacky southpaw reliever the Mets traded for Brooks Raley a couple years ago. I'm waiting for him to make his MLB debut and impact the Rays positively. I know it's going to happen. But for Maton, he brings immediate pen relief for this Mets bullpen. Immediate pen relief. And what is he? He is, in simple terms, your Drew Smith replacement. He's a soft tosser. He's not going to top out more than 90 on those pitches normally. He's a 5-6 pitch mix. He throws the kitchen sink at you. He's got a disaster league curveball when he's working it right. He gets a lot of swing and miss on that sweeper when it's working. But this season, he's been having trouble with the swing and miss, with that sweeper in particular, and with that slider. So let's deep dive. Let's get into what has been the problem with Phil Maton this season for a guy that on his career has a solid showing. Again, just to relay the numbers here for you all in just 1 second, everybody. Give me 1 second as my computer decides to take its dear sweet time trying to load. But as this thing tries to load, Fangraphs, come on, pull up. I know you can do it. Let's get into these numbers here on Phil Maton, because last season in his walk with the Astros, 66 innings, a 3 ERA and a 3.14 expected ERA, a 3.74 FIP. Solid numbers there by Maton. A 10.09 K per nine and a 3.4 walks per nine. This season, 7.6 K per nine to a 4.5 walks per nine, a 4.58 ERA with a 5.23 expected ERA. David Stern said with confidence today that they firmly believe that Maton can, be the guy that they expect him to be, because Maton over his past 12 outings has a sub-1 rate. I am lagging terribly, everybody. Oh my goodness gracious. I apologize about this. I think I just need to close the tab. So give me 1 second. That is what we are going to try to do right here, right now. Wow. Apologies, everybody. I'm terrible at the moment. Okay, guys, are we good on the lag front now? Let me know in the chat, everybody. Let me know in the chat if we're good. If we are, then I'll continue to do my breakdown. It's not an internet issue, JTB. It's just running a lot of things when you're a one-man show is all. That's literally what the only issue is at the moment today. Let's see here. We good? Okay, I think we're good. Alrighty, so to reel back into this, Phil Maton has pitched to a sub-1 ERA over his past 11 outings. He's had, again, a 0.89 whip throughout his, I'm speaking on Jose Quintana there. But speaking on Phil Maton, he has been brilliant over his past 11 or so outings. So the Mets are buying low on a guy that's been riding high for the past month plus. And that's definitely huge to see for Maton, who eats plenty of innings and has already this season for the Rays, 35.5 innings. So he's definitely in line already to pitch right around his career norm, 60 to 70 innings. But Phil Maton, what is there to know a bit about his arsenal here? That is what we're going to get into here shortly. Sean, yep, it definitely goes in hand with that, and we're all good on the connection now. Thank you, guys. But this is what we have to say here on Phil Maton, and what is different about his arsenal this season versus last year. And this all comes courtesy of my great friend Isaac Rothman. Please make sure to give give him a follow on Twitter if you guys haven't already. Maton tops out at just 90 miles per hour, but his value comes from his breaking stuff, and threat is going to come later tonight from Isaac if he didn't post it already. In 2023, Maton's sweeper, which averaged 19 inches of horizontal break, had a 118 stuff plus, so 18% better than the average pitcher in baseball with a sweeping slider. His curveball was at 105 stuff plus, so you understand how these numbers work briefly here, folks. This season, he added a new cutter, which grades out well above average. His curveball averages just 74 miles per hour, making it a super fun pitch. The sweeper is referred to as a super sweeper because it has a ton of horizontal movement. So just when you think, oh, it's disasterly when you see what Ottavino working right this swing and miss, it is a thing of beauty here. One working right, I should preface, for Mr. Maton, because he hasn't had the amount of success that maybe you'd expect from him this season, and there's reasons why. He has picked it up lately, but why did he have a rough start at least? Let's get into that. Most importantly, he has high leverage experience, making this a win-now move. Mind you, Phil Maton has a plethora of playoff experience and has amazing playoff numbers. So for anyone that cares about relievers and pitchers that do well in playoff matchups, playoff format, they've had playoff opportunity, enter Phil Maton. He has done great job, a truly fantastic job that we have seen from Phil Maton with the Houston Astros at the playoff level, at the very least there. And, his pitch mix has changed a lot this year because last year we see it was just a 3-pitch pitcher. Curveball at 40% of the arsenal, 23% was a sweeper, and four-seam for the remainder. This year, he added a cutter and scrapped the four-seam entirely, and he's also throwing that curveball less. Their curveball has worked beautifully for him in the past, so that is something we make note of. The sweeper's horizontal movement has decreased from 19 inches to 17.3, lowering the stuff plus from 118 to 111, so still above average, but not as effective, but still is a very solid pitch for him. The cutter has contributed to his lower overall whiff rate since he can get ground ball outs with it, grading out as a good pitch at 105 stuff plus. So the K per 9 has been going in hand with a higher increase in ground ball percentage versus it being not as getting as much bite on said pitches. So again, some of the numbers I greatly appreciate from my friend Isaac are stuff like this, because again, if you didn't know initially, when you just look through Baseball Savant even and you look at the opponent batting average for sweeper and slider, they're not good for Phil Maton. So naturally you're thinking, okay, he's just getting barreled really hard here. But no, it's not just that. It's also because he hasn't been able to get as much swing and miss because there's been more of an emphasis with ground ball percentage than there has been strikeout percentage this year, working that cutter with the Tampa Bay Rays, of course, a team that's famous for getting the best out of pitching or finding new ways to get new different types of pitches out of even veteran pitchers that you thought had the best stuff already, but yet they're going to showcase more than what you've already seen at the major league level. If he started throwing his four seam again, it could be beneficial due to his elite extension and funky arm angle, which has helped him get ahead in counts a lot throughout his career. The Rays made him stop throwing the four seam in favor of the cutter, but he could mix in both pitches now, something that David Stearns, Jeremy Hefner, and the Mets pitching lab will consider with him, I'm sure. The decline in the sweeper is concerning. It is something to make a note of, the lack of horizontal break there and movement, but his curveball is still the same with a higher whiff rate than the sweeper last year. So the sweeper still not getting as much bite, not getting as much depth there in the break that you're hoping for from sweeper, which is why he went from a 10K per 9 and part to 7.6, excluding the ground ball percentage there. So when looking at that sweeper, and this is something I told Isaac pregame today, that's what I'm going to want to see a better utilization out of and a better, a higher efficiency rate, because right now it's not getting the job done on both the slider and the sweeper. Not looking great. Those two pitches have been big bugaboos for him statistically so far this season. And with a few pitches tweaked, we could definitely see him get back to his old self and be a guy that the Mets got for absolutely nothing and be a high leverage arm for them this season. Again, pretty much what you're looking at with Phil Maton is a better version of Drew Smith. Not with the velocity, but a better guy that knows how to get out of jams, who's been in more high leverage situations and isn't as prone to the long ball the way that Drew Smith has found himself being. His cutter and curveball, he can effectively utilize against lefties especially. And what makes Phil Maton so effective at his best is he's similar to David Robertson in the sense where Maton at his best can get lefty batters out at a quality rate better, if not the same, as righty batters. So when the Mets acquired David Robertson a year or so ago, that was in part to get lefty batters out, and they were struggling with their in-house options beyond Brooks Raley among lefty relievers. Enter Jake Diekman this year, the piece of shit schmuck that he is of a reliever, pardon my French, but it's true. Can't stand the Diekmeister, I really can't. And then you bring in Danny Young, who of course was up and now down already. Josh Walker up and now down already. You just DFA Joey Lucchesi that we haven't even really talked about. you're going to want to have guys that can get quality outs against lefty batters, and it has to go beyond the handedness of said pitcher. Enter a guy here in Phil Maton. No, he has performed his best in the 6th and 7th innings this year, not so much in the 8th and 9th. So to bear in mind, if he's utilized in high leverage, how soon will that be for the Mets? Or will they kind of tread lightly the way that they should based on these numbers? I will tell you, 6th and 7th, not as high leverage, but still can be tight ball games. He's done well. 8th and 9th is where he has faltered, but that was with the Rays and not with the Mets here. So we'll see what that difference will be, everybody. But that is the complete breakdown there on everything that you guys need to know on Phil Maton. Let me know your biggest take on the Mets acquiring him down below in the comments, and for my replay viewers as always, folks. But now let's get into the corresponding move, because Phil Maton is a guy that I want a lot in the offseason. I'm really happy to see the Mets get him now. I will be blunt by saying I do have one major concern with Phil Maton. It's the soft tossing. He has, again, a 5-6 pitch mix, which is exciting. We know that 4 to 5, at least that I should be saying. Soft tosser, does not throw hard velocity. So you need pinpoint accuracy, and you need to get bite, of course, on those chase pitches. For Phil Maton, my concern is that if his pitches come out flat some days, he doesn't have any overwhelmingness with his swing and miss stuff because of the lack of velocity that it's going to entail and cause ourselves a problem. So for Maton, I want to see him not only get ahead of batters, I want to see that sweeper fixed, figured out a little bit if possible. And when looking at that fastball, maybe throw it in a little bit more, as my man Isaac is saying, and that can help balancing things out for a guy that utilized the cutter for the first time this season, or at least the first time in a while in his arsenal here, that being and Phil Maton. But that's everything that you guys need to know there. An exciting and interesting low risk, high reward move for David Stearns and the Mets. And anyone suggesting, Wardy, why aren't the Mets going out of their way to trade right away for Tanner Scott or whoever? If you want more higher leverage quality arms for this bullpen, they're not available right now, because too many teams have yet to decide if they're buying or selling by the deadline, as they're nipping on the heels of those wildcard spots, that third spot in both the American and National League. So if you can acquire a Phil Maton caliber right-hand reliever for what the Mets gave up today, that is a win-win for David Stearns and the Mets. Even if Maton, say, completely falls flat on his face, and let's say worst case scenario, he is absolutely horrendous and just cannot get outs, then you part with him, and you gave up nothing for him to begin with. Again, this is only a high upside play for the Mets here. Low risk, low concern there. I'm just looking forward to seeing what Maton can do as a reliever that was on my reliever list, and we actually had him in our top 5 reliever videos this past offseason, if I'm not mistaken. We talked at great length about Maton. That's why I already have a pre-made thumbnail and stats from the 2023 season of him, because he's been a guy that the Mets have had some form of connection with, and David Stearns did go out of his way to say they did pursue this past offseason. They just didn't land because, it's easier said than done. Sometimes guys prefer elsewhere right away, or in the case of the Rays, they really liked Maton and thought he was going to work. He's been working great lately, but now that they're pretty much out of the playoff picture, or really close to, the Rays are at the point where they're like, okay, let's start to part ways with some guys, if that's at all possible. And for their case, and for the Mets, it absolutely is in getting this deal done. But Joey Lucchesi being the corresponding move, folks, and we're getting close to 200 likes. Continue to smash a like and subscribe on the live show. Thank you all so much for all that. Guys, let me know, what is your immediate reaction to Joey Lucchesi getting the axe? I discussed this at great length in our video earlier, so I won't expand and completely drag this one either, but Lucchesi, if this is the final time he's in the Mets organization, if he is released outright or if he's picked up elsewhere, I want to wish the absolute best for Joey, Michelle's mom, who's a follower of mine that I know, and the entire Lucchesi family, the absolute best in their future endeavors. I have nothing but great things to say about Joey. He has been the ultimate professional. He has won through injuries, of course, throughout his Mets tenure and his young career, and he's fluctuated his production, but Lucchesi has been an arm that the Mets have called upon in a pinch in the past and has stepped up, including what we saw last season in San Francisco, among other starts. Lucchesi, thank you so much for your service, regardless of what your future entails. I know you got roughed up in your spot start against the Phillies this year, but it was a spot start, and it was against the Phillies. So, I'm not going to beat up on you much then when you're pitching in a freaking batter's park on top of that at Citizens Bank, which is oh so hard to win with the way the Phillies have been playing this season. But Joey Lucchesi, who did not provide much to the Mets at the major league level, was still a southpaw, a quality arm for them to consider as either a multi-inning reliever or a spot starter if need be. And you could tell that after the Mets decided not to consider the likes of Joey Lucchesi at any real point this season. And I just realized I froze again. So if I did, I do apologize for that, everybody. but let me know if the audio is still at least coming in. CD with the $5 hall says, Met lineup good enough to compete, just need 2 solid bullpen additions and maybe a number 2 starter. Do you think Bassett coming back is a fit? I don't think Bassett coming back is a fit, personally. I just don't see that relationship rekindling, if I'm being truthful. I think if the Mets go for a short-term starting option, a guy like Eric Fetty makes a lot more sense because he's controllable beyond 2024. And yes, he's going to come at a fair premium for a trade deadline price, so that could turn off the Mets away, who aren't in dire need of starting pitching help. They will tell you first they're not in dire need of it, the way that maybe some of you guys think. I don't foresee Bassett as a great possibility over one like Fetty right now, in my humble opinion. But I didn't freeze. Okay, good. So talk a little bit more here on our initial point in all this. For Joey Lucchesi, I just want to hear from you guys. Where do you stand on the Joey Fuego front? Again, this was a guy that's been serviceable for the Mets in the past, but after not considering him for the bullpen when he's had previous bullpen experience during his time with the San Diego Padres, that was kind of a sign that the Mets really weren't going to consider Joey for much this season, only in true desperate manner, which they've had to in recent years under Billy Epler and Zach Scott. Now that Joey Lucchesi has been DFA'd, he can either be picked up outright by an opposing team, or he may have the right to be released from his contract and become a free agent should he not want to stay in AAA Syracuse. So we will find out that information in the ensuing 24 to 48 hours. But that is the latest updates for the Metsies on that front. Phil Maton is now a part of this bullpen for the time being, and we'll see how he does. And Joey Lucchesi is no longer a part of the organization, barring changes that we may find in the coming days. So be on the lookout there, everybody. To my roughly 1,300 concurrent viewers, thank you all so much for continuing to smash that like and subscribe button. To my Twitter followers, hit that like, that retweet button, and that follow button. But no, as always, I will only be interacting with our live viewers here on YouTube. Now, before we wrap up the show, folks, actually, I just realized I don't have a prospect. Wait, do I have a prospect report for you? Yes, I do. I'm a dummy. I'm sorry. I'm thinking today's Monday for whatever reason. Syracuse Mets box score. Let's see what the little Metsies did. Anything notable today? Because Kodai Senga, I'm an idiot. Obviously, Kodai Senga had his outing today of 2.2 for the Syracuse Mets, as they actually lost that game in the 10th inning, 8-6. And funny enough, Tyler J was the losing pitcher, the same one who got absolutely rocked when the Mets called him and Matt Festa up, which was horrendous. Luis Angel Acuna with a terrible day at the plate, 0-for-5 with a run scored. Acuna not doing himself any favors, who also did not look good in center field today, played both center and shortstop. Brett Beatty, 0-for-2 with a run scored. Beatty's 288 average and 900 OPS. Rylan Bannon was productive on the offensive end. Luke Ritter with 2 RBIs, 1-for-4 that we see there. Nothing else really notable on the offensive end for the Mets that I see here. Senga that we discussed. Max Kranick pitched 1.1 scoreless innings at the AAA level. Love me some Max Kranick. Josh Walker got rocked today, unfortunately, which sucks. Walker's an arm that I figured the Mets would consider again soon, but not today. Walker gives up 4 earned runs over 0.1 innings. Cole Sulzer's arm I fully expect the Mets to consider again with a wipeout slider, nasty one. 2 scoreless innings today for him. Ty Adcock, 1.2 shutty as he was just sent down. And that's it there on the AAA Syracuse front. As we jump now to the Rumble Ponies and we check their box score, let's see how the Rumble Ponies have been doing. When we look at guys that are notable of them, is headlined by guys like Brandon Sproat and Mr. Ryan Clifford. The Mets did win today with the Rumble Ponies at the AA level, and funny enough, the losing pitcher for the Fisher cast, his last name is Mendoza. Wonder if he knows Carlos. For the Mets here, what we see is JT Schwartz went 1-for-4 with a run scored and 2 RBIs. Consuerga had a home run. Kevin Parado went 1-for-5. Jalen Palmer went 2-for-4. Nothing from Alex Ramirez, though, in leadoff, but he did have 3 walks, something to bear in mind. And Tyler Stewart went another strong outing. 6 scoreless innings of 4 hit, 1 earned run ball, 0 walks, 5 strikeouts for the Mets pitching prospect. Stewart, who has been kind of a late bloomer as well in his minor league career, has been balling out that we've seen over his past couple starts now. Stewart is another arm that the Mets have in the fold of guys that they can consider at any point in the season, either as a multi-inning reliever or a starter if need be. As we take a look now at the Brooklyn Cyclones, let's double check here. Mariners 5-0 on the Padres now. Nice. Finally someone's starting to calm down the Padres. Shout out to Mariners too, because their offense has been so up and down this season. Nick Morabito with a hit. He's been looking great there. One of the Mets' top outfield prospects that we see this season. Drew Gilbert being out with injury too has definitely amplified the likes of Morabito being under the spotlight a little bit. Gilbert will return to the Mets soon here in the month of July, and when Syracuse at least. But the Brooklyn Cyclones did lose 5-3 today. And on the prospect end, there's really nothing to make note of on either the pitching or the offensive end. So let's round out the show by checking out the Port St. Lucie Mets, and that's going to do it then, folks. Thank you all so much to everybody that took the time to chime in live on a replay today, as the Mets again won by a final score of 7-5. And tomorrow's show, folks, barring any changes, we will either have a special guest or I will take live callers. I promised you guys right around a week ago that we would do live callers, and unfortunately never happened with my scheduling at the time. So barring any changes, barring any craziness in the stream or anything like that, I will either take callers or have a special guest, and hopefully a series victory post-game show tomorrow between the Mets and the Nationals. So I hope to see each and every one of you there. And the Port St. Lucie Mets did win today by a final score of 5-1. And finally, we have some positive prospect outings to get into. Headlined here by Colin Houck, Mets first-round pick from a year ago. Went 2 for 4 today with an RBI. Big hitting there from Houck, who has been fluctuating quite a bit with his lack of offensive production there at the pro level to kick off his young career. And then we see Mr. Gomez on the starting end. Let's see who this is. Franklin Gomez, the 19-year-old. Oh, baby. Crazy's 19. Pitched 7 beautiful innings that we see in the minor leagues. That is the latest arm to consider and think about, Mets fans. Mr. Franklin Gomez with 7 shutout innings, taking a note out of the Jose Quintana playbook. And that is going to do it now for the show. Thank you all so much again for watching. Greatly appreciate that. We will be back live tomorrow. Be on the lookout, folks. If not tomorrow, then in the coming days, we will have some trade-related content out on the channel this week. Very excited for that, as always. But again, thank you all so much for taking the time to chime into the latest Metropolitan Postgame show as the Mets win this one again by a final score of 7-5. Have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this, everybody. And this is your boy, Wardy, signing out.